Hello friends, this is Layla Harris and I want to show you my first card I've made with the Chelsea Gardens paper collection. You'll see here that I used a couple of the stamps from the Chelsea Gardens card making stamp set and from the January stamp of the month. Here's the Chelsea Gardens stamp set for card making C1709. You can also buy it as a bundle as Z4158. This includes the thin cuts with many different shapes, as you can see in my package, and that. So today I cut these from vellum, and when I do it, I usually cut 2 or more sets of butterflies and shapes, and I usually cut them in 2 layers with my big shot. That way they cut a little bit more efficiently and fewer times through. So that's what I'm showing you here. I also used the January 2018 stamp of the month. It is called Bloom and Grow and is S1801. Okay, let's get started stamping. But first, before I emboss, I must remember that I want a little bit of cornstarch on the surface of my paper. This helps prevent any static cling and stray spots of embossing powder being left behind where I don't want it to. This is my homemade embossing buddy. It is actually an old nylon knee-high that I put some cornstarch into and twisted and tied a bunch of times, and it does a great job of preparing my papers for embossing as well as getting rid of sticky on the back of stickers and stickies. I'm using Versamark watermark stamp pad that we sell in the catalog, in the main catalog, for this part. This is a clear sticky ink. You have to heat set it in order for it to dry. Now I'm using one of my really old bottles of silver embossing powder. It's still really good, and I don't know if you saw that I have a bandage on my right thumb, but it makes me all thumbs because I'm not very graceful at picking out my working with my projects and that. So I sped this up. I keep my embossing powder in an old take and toss container because that way I don't have to use a file folder and a folded piece of paper to track the embossing powder and dump it and everything. I just use it and put it away. So I've had this heat tool for ages and I love it still, and it works really well. The great thing with embossing is you don't have to let it dry. I used 2 markers on this project, GY234 leaf green, and then later turquoise blue, B68. I moved my project closer to the camera for this so that you could see it better. I'm actually coloring the back side of my leaf and vine, or whatever you want to call it, branch I suppose, 1 time over with the leaf green marker. And you just pretty much trace the lines. I put my paper or my project on a white piece of paper so that I can see through it more easily, and that my black mat wasn't doing the trick for me. For my branch here, I actually flipped it over to give my leaves a 2-tone color and applied a second layer of ink on half of each leaf. And I did this on the front. You don't have to fill it in completely, but you do need to be a little bit more careful with coloring because the color will color the silver embossing powder. That's just the nature of these markers because they are alcohol based. I also colored with turquoise blue, B68 of the Shinhan markers. When I'm done coloring, and this dries virtually instantly, I gave the wings some bend so that they would be lifted up off of the card. I bent them backwards and then folded the body together like a taco. That gave it some curl. Don't forget to make sure your caps are on your alcohol markers. They dry out really quickly. And now we're going to work on stamping the card with these S1801 stamp set. Here is a big 4x4 block that fits the 3x4 inch seed packet. I usually swirl my ink around and then I stamp up and down directly a few times to get good coverage. And I'm not worried that this is upside down. I push down, and I do have it on my mat that has a foam backing. I forgot to mention that I stamped the seed packet with my Fern ink pad. And then next, I'm going to stamp the sentiment with Glacier ink. Next, I'm going to trim away the excess white material so that I have just a fern edge of the seed packet. And I'm going to use my scissors for this, or you can use a paper trimmer. For my workshop, we're going to use my non-stick scissors that are from Close to My Heart because they don't take up a lot of space. When I do this for myself, I would probably use a paper trimmer. I like the one that has the wire that's sold by Fiskars that is in our catalog. So there, by the magic of video, we have the trimmed up card. And I inked the edges just in case there was a little bit of white showing and I didn't trim perfectly. This I inked in Fern because that's the ink along the edge. I'm also inking the cardstock and the edge of the B&T floral paper in Glacier ink. This is just the swipe method. You could also use a foam dauber or one of our wedges of sponge, but I prefer this one because it's just fast and I don't have to hunt down a tool. In fact, I actually had a sponge out for this video and then I was like, oh, look, it's across the room. Let's just swipe. Okay, now we're ready to assemble the card. And a lot of times I will work from the top down and the bottom up at the same time. And this time I'm just putting in the B&T paper in the background. And then the next two layers I will adhere together. Oh, I double checked the butterflies along the edge of the paper because some of them were flying upside down. Didn't matter which that they were flying upside down in the middle of the card because we're covering that part up. So here I'm adhering the seed packet to the cardstock. I know you need a play-by-play and are just really curious of what I'm doing here. I like this dot adhesive because it's really forgiving. You'll see here that I stuck my pieces down crooked and I didn't like it, but I was able to pull them back up and reposition. But I will let you know that this, after about an hour, does stick permanently. Okay, now it's time to embellish my card with my two pieces of vellum. And I just used a little bit of the dot adhesive down at the base of the stem. That way it can pull, kind of flop around and show its three-dimensionalness. And then I will use my 3D foam. This tape, I wish I would have shown you this part of the video and gotten it captured on. I just took a really narrow cut, about 1/8 of an inch wide, up the spool of 3D foam tape, and it's about just over 1/2 inch. And this thin 3D foam tape is great. It adds dimension, but it still makes the postman or letter carrier happy because it does not add bulk. It's great for scrapbooking too. So that's my card. Thank you for watching my video. This is the first time I've done a video of this format, and I appreciate you watching. Thank you. Have a good day.